welcome to today's podcast. The title of the book is Springer International Handbooks of Education, Handbook of Using Virtual Exchange Across Disciplines, Building Global Citizens from Home, edited by Dr. Kelly Tzoumis, published by Springer Nature. The anticipated print version of this book will be out in April 2026. I'm Jay Zhang. I'm a professor of special education at SUNY Broadport in the United States, and I serve as the section editor for accessibility and inclusion. So today, join me in this episode is two colleagues who co-authored a chapter, and they are Dr. Maria Mello from St. John's University in the United States and Dr. Ciglia Camargo from Universidade Federal de Pelotas in Brazil. And also co-authored with them Dr. Adriana Borges, as well as Dr. Carlu Schmidt. So the title of their chapter is Global Collaboration for Inclusive Education, Preparing Educators in Brazil and the United States to Support Students with Disabilities. And now I would like to introduce Dr. Mello and Dr. Camargo to introduce yourselves and to talk about your titles and your universities, please. Thank you.
Sure, I can go first. Hi, I'm Dr. Maria Palomello. I'm an associate professor of special education at St. John's University in the Department of Ed Specialties in the School of Ed. We are in Queens, New York. I think that's
Hello, I'm Dr. Camargo, Ciglia Camargo. I am from Brazil. I am professor of inclusive education in the graduate program of education at Federal University of Pelotas in the south of Brazil.
Thank you and welcome, Dr. Mello and Dr. Camargo. Would you like to share some background information about how you became partners?
I'll jump in because it's actually quite a funny story how we became partners. It starts back in 2016, 10 years ago. I was at a conference in Atlanta, Georgia, I believe. It was the AAIDD conference, and I went to a session uh, by Brazilian master students at the time, talking about some of the work they were doing around disability and inclusion in classrooms in Brazil. And I introduced myself to a group of Brazilians and was like, I am, originally from Brazil. I've been really interested in, getting to know the work that you're doing in disability, and so on and so forth. Cut to like 2 years later, I get a message from a student of Siglia's, who I didn't know Siglia at the time. And he was one of the people that I had met at that conference, and he was really interested in doing some things in the United States. And one of my professors, when I was in grad school, knew that I was from Brazil and connected him with me. And I had just started off at St. John's University. And Siglia, and then in my conversations with him, he was like, I think you and my graduate advisor, my doctoral advisor, would get along really well. And so he was like, I think you need to meet my graduate advisor, right? So I said, sure, absolutely. I'm ha more than happy to like meet your doctoral advisor. Why not? So I met with Siglia, and then after that, I think that we became colleagues and friends. We started writing together as well. And then at St. John's, this opportunity came up to do so at St. John's, we call it a global online learning exchange or goal or whatever you want to call it. And this opportunity came up, and they were just launching it. And I was like, do you want to do this with me? It sounds like a really fun thing to do together. And so we applied for it and we got it. And we had to pause our project because we were going to do our project in 2020, but of course, of the global pandemic, we paused and we did our project in fall 2021. And it was a really great experience. And I know we're going to talk about that soon, but I'll let Siglia share her side of the story of how
Yeah,
we
that's
became
funny.
partners.
And Daniel was my student, and he is today our colleague because he's now a doctor, Daniel. And he talked to me about the Dr. Mello and told me that I would like to meet her. And I took my PhD in Texas, so he thought that it would be really nice if I could talk with her about doing a partnership between Brazil and United States in our research in special education. So we met first time. I remember this day like today, and we were in a classroom at the university with a bad connectivity for the internet, but we could talk like we were old friends, and it was like a good match. And we start planning things and research projects, and the teaching thing came after we started working some ideas, and then the goal opportunity came up, and then we shared this experience that was very nice.
Yeah, and Siglia got to come to visit St. John's as well. I have yet to go to Pelotas. And so
Mhm.
that's how we kind of started our our partnership, and we've done a lot beyond gold together, beyond the VE or virtual exchange. We've done a lot of other things together as well. But a lot of a few virtual exchange opportunities for our students too.
Yeah. So I went to New York through a technical visit, something like my university was promoting, and Brazil was also funding. And then I went to New York, and then I met her live at the same time. So we knew each other like about a year or so.
Mhm.
So we met first time personally, and it was a great meeting. And that occasion, I also present her other researchers, Brazilian researchers like Carlo and Adriana, who are with us in the chapter.
Yeah, so because of Siglia's visit, I got to meet Carlo and I got to meet Adriana as well. And Adriana was here in New York, and I met Adriana specifically because she was here doing an exchange in New York City as well, in one of the CUNYs. And Siglia was like, I have this colleague you should meet. And so I met Adriana through that, and she was here for a year. And then Carlo came to New York when Siglia came to visit. Um, or yes, yeah, and Carlo came to New York, and then I met Carlo through that, and we just kind of expanded our collaborations across different universities in Brazil, and so we did, and we'll talk about the chapter in a little bit, but we are talking specifically about three separate collaborations: one that I did with Siglia, one that I did with Carlo and Siglia, and then one that I did with Adriana separately.
Wow, thank you for sharing. What a powerful story about the human connections and the expanding of the networking through human connections. So
Mhm.
wonderful. Thank you for sharing. It made me look forward to hearing about your virtual exchange even further. Um, so the next question is, would you like to talk about your chapter, including the results and its impact? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So this was three, like I said, it was three separate collaborations. So we actually the four, the four of us had three different collaborations. So Sigrid and I had our first collaboration in fall 2021. And then we redid our collaboration together and brought Carlo in with his students. And then Adriana and I in fall, that was in fall 2024, and then Adriana and I did a collaboration in spring 2025. And this chapter was a great opportunity to bring together all of the data and all of the information we had learned across all of these three collaborations, because all of them were within special education, were really focused on inclusive education. So before we get into the results, I think giving some background on, how we envisioned this chapter, I think is important. So we really kicked off the chapter looking at the growing need of people with disabilities across, globally, but particularly in Brazil and the United States, with the growing need of students who are identified with disabilities in schools and needing school services under IDEA. And then I can pass it on to Siglia so she can say a little bit about Brazil.
Yeah, in Brazil, we have like a worldwide. We have many children with disabilities in schools, and many teachers or teachers in progress. Like they do not know how to teach and how to manage a classroom with students with disabilities. And I particularly have learned a lot with my professors and colleagues from in the United States. And when we start talking about doing this collaboration, I thought that would be a great opportunity for my students to learn and share this experience and what they have learned with other teachers in order to provide a better service for students with disabilities. And what we have as a return from them is that it was a great experience. So we can talk a little bit about the results, I guess.
Yeah, I think for just some additional context, one of the things that really like came through that we give some of that context in the beginning of the chapter, in the introduction of the chapter, is really the differences between what legislatively the landscape looks like in special education and in the United States, because there are some similarities, but there are some differences, and especially around inclusive education, because in the United States, we conceptualize that as like the least restrictive environment and other things like that, right? And in Brazil, there's much stronger legislation for the inclusion of students with disabilities in the general education setting. And so we really wanted to, I think, showcase, because we that came through to our students as well, the differences in structures of education systems, special education in particular, and the supports and services that students with disabilities receive. And what, like Siglia said, the need for educators to learn strategies to be more inclusive is critical here in the United States, in Brazil, and I bet globally as well in other countries. And so that was really important for us, a really important collaboration for us to show our students like this is a great need globally for students with disabilities, and for us to learn these inclusive strategies so we can ensure that we're meaningfully including students with disabilities in the classroom, and that they're getting the right supports and services to succeed as well.
Yeah, and what is interesting is that sometimes the students think that we have totally different realities, and it was great to see how they realize that we have many challenges, just as U.S. and in the other way as well, and so realizing that they could share experience, try to get solutions, and um, learn together, even if they are in different roles. They got a very nice experience from it, and what they gave us a feedback was a way to assured that we did a good thing for them. You know, that collaborating globally with other countries, even if we are not in the same language, sometimes we have difficulties with that, but we can overcome these challenges and learn together and learn about different cultures as well. And this was something important and very different for them, because different from United States, we don't have too much people coming from other countries, and sometimes they might think that everybody is, you know, like you can treat everybody in the same way, and there's no many differences. But you know, learning from other cultures, especially from the United States, who have a large experience with people from other cultures, countries, and different backgrounds, was a, a great step for their education.
Yeah, and one of the things that we did was we wanted to see what was common across all these three collaborations, because each collaboration was a little bit different than the other. We wanted to see what are the common experiences that our students are having when we're approaching teaching these strategies in inclusive education and supporting students who have a lot of support needs. Sorry, that I meant to say messing up my words. I'm good at my long pause right now. We wanted to see how, no, I forgot what I was going to say. Edit that out. Um,
Start
no,
over.
what we were trying to do was we were trying to approach a project where our students could find a solution to the need to meet the needs of students with disabilities, and can be pretty complex. And given the different like educational structures, those ideas might not work in specific systems. And so one of the things that was really important was them to take account that educational system in which they were working with, and provide feedback for each other and work collaboratively to find those solutions, to meet those complex needs of students with disabilities. Um, when we looked across all three collaborations, we found sort of convergent themes to be, you know, language as a bridge and barrier. And we specifically wrote bridge and barrier because a lot of times, and it's not uncommon in virtual exchange for people to find language to be a potential barrier for collaboration. But what we found was our students were really creative within that, in realizing how critical and important it was for them to communicate with each other, learn those communication systems, and learn effective ways to communicate outside of a language that they might not know. And they got really creative in ways in which we didn't like think about. And so it was really nice to see how they valued that collaboration, that they were able to find solutions even to that, what they deemed to be a potential barrier, in their working together, in their collaboration. Um, and then we also found that, like Siglia has said, right, there's lots of practical implications for the work that they do to support students with disabilities. And they were looking at the differences, the similarities between the United States and Brazil, and finding that there were a lot of similarities actually between both countries in ways in which they didn't kind of envision beforehand. And some of the difficulties in supporting students with disabilities because of systemic and structural issues within like school system supports and like legislation, right? And so I think we found that like across the board, across all of our three collaborations. And then for them, so Sigli and I, and Sigli, you can confirm this, if this is true or not, but one of the things that when we built our collaborations is we wanted to make it practical for them so that they could take what they're learning and apply it right away in the classrooms that they were teaching in, or they were observing in, or whatever it was that they were doing. And we found that there were a lot of practical implications. Our students even said that they could take what they were learning in the discipline and bring it to their classrooms and adapt it to what their classroom's needs are. So they could take those concepts and adapt it to what their needs are and to what their concepts to what their classroom looked like in the practical class in their practical classroom experiences, and this was both in Brazil and the United States as well.
Yeah, and although it was hard to make this practical component of the class, it was a little hard because it is not exactly the same as you would be there in the classroom observing a student. But today we can use many tools that can help us to do that and bring this opportunity to our students that perhaps would never have the chance to go to other country. So in the first and the second experience we had, we had this practical component, right, Maria Paula? And
Mhm.
we did it in different ways. Learning from the first experience, we made some changes in the second experience. And after the second experience, now we have other ideas actually from students. For example, the feedback I had from my students was that I had the class in English because even when we had some classes that was only me and my students teaching, I used to teach in English for them using my presentation in English. So they told me that it could be better if I could speak in Portuguese and have the slides in English, so the language would make sense for them. The English language they see in the slides would make more sense for them than just speaking English and everything in English. So they would have more vocabulary for when interacting with American students. So that was something I didn't think about before, and maybe might be something to try next in the next experience. So we
Yeah.
learn every time.
Yeah, Celia and I learned so much through this collaboration too. I mean, that part is not in the chapter because we're taking our students' learning and highlighting that in the chapter, but for our own, and I don't want to speak for Adriana and Carlos, but I feel like they would maybe say the same thing. And just our for ourselves, we also learned so much. And I've learned so much from them through these experiences. And we've learned a lot from our students that have just made our potential future collaborations will hopefully be we can build on that through what we've learned in this chapter as well. The other part of it was this growth in intercultural competency. From my perspective, I am in New York City. We are a really, really diverse city, and our students are working with a diverse population of students and families. And so that intercultural competency was a really important piece of their experience. And within the discipline, within teacher education, and within learning these evidence-based strategies to make inclusive systems, how can you also be engaged in intercultural competencies? And we were really thinking more forward towards conceptual framework of cultural humility for our
Mhm.
students, where this is lifelong learning. It's a lifelong skill. It is not something you do once. It's something that you take with you into your practice, into your teaching. And so really like the themes that came out in our chapter were interconnected, like you really couldn't have one without the other. They were experiences that were interwoven for our students. Um, and I think that our students really showed an openness and empathy and like a curiosity during their experience and during their reflections and discussions across all of three of them to really question their assumptions as well of what they think about what inclusion means and what that actually can look like for their classrooms and for their students with disabilities. Um,
And they could practice that with themselves, right? So they were in a diverse meeting with different students from other languages, from different backgrounds,
mhm,
and experiencing different educational systems, right? So here in Brazil, we have a full inclusion. So it look like a little bit different, but the same needs in terms of teacher education, teacher preparation for students with disabilities is something common that we think that we could provide them with this experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that they having this experience, they are able to then, when they are meeting families, at least here in New York, when they are meeting families who come from a different culture, come from a different language, they're able to take those creative ways in which they approach language, in which they approach
Mhm.
culture, and
Exactly.
the ways in which they learned cultural humility to the work that they do with those families, and that is some of the feedback that we did get from our students that is highlighted in the chapter. And they talk about a lot about how um, they also that helped them with their professional skills too. And so, our students in teacher ed, we're looking not just, you're engaging cultural humility, you're learning evidence-based practices, but you're also learning those skills that are really important for a career, for your career as an educator, which is collaboration, and being a professional teacher and a professional learner as well. And I think that was the other theme that came through was that mutual and shared professional learning, where that they you know because we approach things with an interprofessional perspective, that like you have to come together, have to make a shared decision for this project, particularly the first project, and you have to come to solutions together and support each other. Then that was, I think, a really important way for them to see how collective learning through collaboration can help them think through solutions for more complex problems that might arise in their classrooms. And I think it helped them grow in the strategies we're teaching, because it's one thing for us to just like teach them something, but it's another thing for them to apply that, to make decisions together about those strategies and to really have those discussions together.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm sure in addition to this great opportunity as the virtual exchange project, you also are doing the role modeling for the students, because the students see how you take their feedback and make the next project even better. So you're constantly learning, constantly thinking, reflecting, and making the project even better for the students. So wonderful. Thank you. I wish I were a student in the classroom and learn from you and also together with your students. That's so exciting. So the next question, you kind of touched base on upon that, like based on the chapter, what impact did virtual exchange have on the subject matter of your course? I think you kind of talked about that, but do you have any additional thoughts on this? Thank you.
I think one of the important aspects that came, and this one actually came through a little bit more in my collaboration with Adriana, so I'll speak a little bit more about that. She's not here with us right now, but I'll on behalf of our collaboration, was really how disability is viewed globally, um, and the conceptualization of disability and how that's conceptualized globally can vary and can be different. And I think that that came through in our collaboration. And that was a big impact of that, because one of the students, and I actually think that in our first collaboration, Siglia, that came out too, because the student said, like, parents are coming to New York. One of my students in the first collaboration with Siglia said parents are coming to New York and they have a different system, they have a different view of disability and than what we know, than what we learn. And we have to take that into perspective when we're working with families. And I think that that came through as well in my collaboration with Adriana and for what the students learned. And so I think in terms of the subject matter, that was a really important piece of it. Um, that, disability isn't just what's like listed under IDEA. Right. So that's from my perspective.
And from my end, I think that one thing that was very impactful for students was especially students from Brazil was to see some differences on what teachers or teachers to be are learning to be teachers. You know, one thing that came was how teachers in the United States know a little more about the students' behavior and can describe the students' behaviors that was or subject in your discipline. So and how in the field they could see that how Brazilian teachers had a hard time in defining the students' behaviors to tell them and to give them some signs of the function of the behavior. So Brazilian teachers had a hard time on describing it, and they realize, our students realize how important it is to make a difference for a student with disability who presents behavior problems, for example. So how it's important to find out the function of that behavior so they can better manage those behaviors. And this was something that I think was had a good impact of this experience for the students to realize how important some things are to be a good teacher for students with disabilities.
Yeah, and I think that the other piece of that that goes in line with that is, the teacher education piece, where so what was surprising for me is that, one of the things that came up in the focus group that we talk about in the chapter is the Brazilian students had said that, oh, the American students like know this concepts already. And I was like, no, this was new for them too, right? They didn't.
Right, yeah.
This was new for them too. Everyone was learning the same things at the same time. And but just how much language was an important piece, because I think that that was why it seemed maybe like the students knew a little bit more about the subject matter. So that's an important piece for us to take into consideration. And about the impact of VE, is that the ways in which we talk about our subject matter are really important. And the ways in which we train our teachers in that are really important. I think Siglia gave an example already about how she how she does her training in English and Portuguese and with her slides, etc. But the other piece of it, I think that's really is that teacher education and teacher training is such a critical issue globally, that it's not just it's not just here in the United States or in Brazil, and the teacher shortage is a problem too, right? And so that training goes into that teacher shortage aspect as well, and the needs we have for special education teachers in New York and in Brazil is the same. Um,
Mhm.
and then again, I guess the impact of VE is that I think it expands beyond just what our students learn and that one collaboration. Our students remember the collaboration even after they're done with it, right? Even a year or two out, when they're done with the collaboration, it still impacts, they still remember it. They still remember that experience. And I think that that is an important piece of why VE is important. I think we have a quote in the chapter, but one of our students said, this isn't just like a PowerPoint slide you gave us to talk about like some kind of like another like education system. It was an experience that we had that we can take with us when we're in the field. And I think that that for me is the one of the bigger impacts of VE.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you so much. You are not only preparing the students for only the content experts, but also you're preparing the students for actually the effective practitioners who can effectively deliver their instructions, plan and deliver the instructions, as well as communicate with their students as well as the family members, which is definitely very supportive to their future career that they are going to use. So, yeah, thank you. Um, And the last question, you also kind of touch base on that, but I would also like to hear more if you have additional thoughts. So what would have been missed in teaching about your discipline if the virtual exchanges were not included?
Yeah, I think yeah. Like what additional things could you know, I talked about like the conceptualization of disability. I think that that was an important piece of it. Even the idea of inclusion and what inclusion means, and that the ways in which we talk about inclusion here, and I always like least restricted environment is not inclusion, right? And I always have to make that clear to my students that it's where in Brazil, like it's very much in their, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's very much in their law that students have to be in the general education classroom. And when we look at the percentage of students who are outside of the general education classroom, it's very little compared to those. But we see in the United States a trend that's increasing in the students and their inclusion in general education classrooms. And so we see that trend as has gone up in Brazil like exponentially since the new legislations. And so that is, I think, what would have been missed is those concepts of like what meaningful inclusion looks like and how can we work together globally, learn from each other to be able to do that on like a larger scale in our classrooms, because there's so much that our students can learn from the Brazilian students, and the American students can learn from the Brazilian students, and Brazilian students can learn from the American students, that it would have been missed if we weren't there, if we didn't have, sorry, it would have been missed if we had not done this global collaboration. Um, yeah.
And also, it's a obvious answer, but this opportunity of exchanging with students from other country, this is something that it may be the only experience abroad that some of my students might have, and they think at the first moment, at the first time, that they would not be able to do it because they don't know the language, because English is too hard, because many things. They think they might not be able to complete the course because of these challenges, and at the end, when we reinforce them and tell them they can do it, and they can use some tools, they can try to communicate, and when they feel they are growing in this process, they feel like, yes, we can. And this is a good learning, because when we are talking about students with disabilities, we also have to believe that they can learn, and we have to provide all the stimuli that you can give for them to grow. So I think that when we had this type of experience, we kind of do the same with our students in both sides, not just for Brazilians, but also for Americans. Perhaps was the first time, in perhaps the only, or the only time, the unique time we had an exchange with a Brazilian. So these things are something very special from this opportunity that we'd have missed if we didn't have it.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point, Siglia, because I think that they I think that this opportunity is one, a global opportunity that many students might not get if they don't, if because they might not be traveling abroad and stuff like that, but it was a challenging opportunity for them, and in the same ways they're able to build their confidence. And I think that actually they would not have gotten those challenges and to build their confidence in not just the discipline, but in their confidence as teachers and their efficacy as teachers, if they had not gone through this collaboration. So I think that that piece is a really important piece, not just for the Brazilian students, as Sigler said, but for the students in the United States. I think that it was also challenging, but they saw that they could problem solve. They saw that they could be creative. They saw that they could use and learn new tools. WhatsApp, none of them knew or had used WhatsApp before. And so and
Yeah.
really like think about and I think the other piece is that they were able to think about disability not just about academic achievement, but like about this long-term quality of life. How do we do that to make sure that our students grow after they're out of our classrooms, that they're able to grow and have a successful life afterwards too, in those post-school outcomes and successes for people with disabilities outside of just the classroom, right? How are we working to build this inclusive strategies in our classrooms so that we ensure that throughout the lifespan, our students with disabilities are successful and have the life they want to lead. So I think that that is, and it seems kind of like a nebulous connection, but I think that those challenges that they faced, build to that and those ideas.
Thank you so much. This is actually, I think, like a challenging but awarding experience for a lot of for your students, and I also believe probably for the professors as well. Like you see,
Yes,
the
certainly.
students. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the students may struggle and then come up with creative solutions, doing problem solving and collaborate together and be persistent, be resilient, and accomplish the outcomes. Um, and then probably, hopefully, maintain the kind of friendship even after or beyond the virtual exchange. So that's invaluable experience you are bringing to your students. Thank you for doing this. And also thank you for joining us today and for giving us such a rich and informative podcast that shared your talents and experiences and expertise with us. I really appreciate that. Thank you for the time with us.
Oh, thank
Thank
you
you
for
for the
having us.
opportunity.
Thank you.